Game's called Capture the Ball for grades 4 to 8. You'll need cones, balls, and hula hoops. Thanks to Sean McGuire and Kevin Williams for this game idea. So to start, you'll place down a ball on a cone on each of the halves of the gym, one for each side, and one team on one half, one team on the other half, and you'll have a guard who's going to be inside the three-point line, the only player from their team allowed inside that area who can guard their ball. They have to be within arm's length away from the ball, though, so they can't go too close to guard. And then there are going to be some hula hoops inside, which will act as safe zones. So when the purple team is over on the blue half, they can get tagged if they're on there in that half, but if they go into the blue hula hoops there, they're safe, so they can spend some time in the safe zone before they make their next move. Same thing, blue team, when they're on the purple's half, they can go in those safe zones. And then each team will also have a jail in the corners, or where you'd like to set that up. So the basic idea of the game is to try and steal the ball and get it to your half, and then you'd win the round. You'd get a point for that round. So if a player goes and tries to grab the ball, but that purple player is on the blue's half, can get tagged. So it was tagged, goes into the jail. So your typical capture the flag with your jails. Another player has gone across without being noticed and has snuck into a safe area, which you can't get tagged in there, but then has tried to escape and got tagged by the guard. And so that player would then also go into the jail. Between rounds, just as a side point here, the guard will always change that role, so somebody else the next round would get to be the guard. And a player has gone across and has saved somebody from the jail, so they have to save whoever was in there longest, and then those players can get a free walk back to their side. And we see another player has gone across and has grabbed the ball. Now at this point, that player can try all by themselves to try and bring it back, which this player will do, and has successfully made it across without getting tagged, so they would win that round. Instead of just traveling across, that player could then instead try throwing it to somebody, so making passes or tossing it until it gets across to the half, but it can't be caught over it can be caught over the half, but if somebody on the team had caught it on their half, they'd have to quickly go across and step over the line, because the rule is that they need to step across from the one team's half onto the other for the point. And that's it for the basic idea. It's called FLASKETBALL for grades 5 to 8. You're going to need a football and a basketball court, and thanks to Mary Kirschbaum for this idea. So you're going to start on your basketball court, and you can use more than one if you have, and have teams of 5 on 5 would be good. Maybe less than that, it would work too, 4 on 4, 3 on 3. And you're going to put a football down. It could be a real football or a foam football, something that you have that works. And to start, you're going to have one player from each team. They're going to meet in the middle for a rock, paper, scissors to see who gets what possession, whether you're going to be defender or receiver. So after they've done it, they've determined that blue team's going to be the defenders and the purple's going to be receivers. And the game starts with, instead of a kickoff, it's actually a throw off. So one player is going to launch the ball towards the other team, and they're going to try and catch it. Hopefully they catch it. If not, it doesn't matter. They can catch it off the bounce, or even if they drop it, they'll still get possession on this first throw off. And we're going to look from here at the rules. It's basically a game of ultimate frisbee using a football on a basketball court. So it's pretty straightforward. Obviously, the object of the game is to score a point by throwing it into the opposing team's basket. Players, they have to pass the ball to advance it. They can't run with it. They can't take any steps or anything like that. And if the ball is dropped, then the possession switches to the other team. So we'll see just a quick little example here. When the game was in play, and then of course the defenders come out to defend. Everyone's running around at the same time. A pass was completed there, and another pass was attempted, but it was missed and it landed on the ground. So then the blue team would have possession. They can pick it up and go from there. And well, nobody was moving around, although they should have been. And so an easy basket or an easy point was scored for that blue team. And that's the essential basic idea. There's a couple other rules though that are important. The defenders, they can only guard within 1 to 2 feet, so you got to give them room, and that's an ultimate frisbee rule. And the defenders can also not hit the ball out of the hand of the offense. They can swat it out of the air, so if the ball is thrown, then they can hit the ball down, and if they do that, then they will get possession. And other than that, play for a certain amount of time, maybe four quarters of 5 minutes or 2 halves of 10, or up to a certain score. This game's called Slappers for grades 4 to 8. You'll need 4 nets, like floor hockey nets, and 4 bouncy balls. Something like a racquetball ball works great, or something that's not too hard, that bounces pretty good. You're going to start by placing the nets down, 4 nets in the corners facing the wall, and 4 teams, 1 per net. You can throw a goalie in there if you like, and then you'll place in the balls, the bouncy balls. And as the name says, slappers, basically they're slapping only, not each other but the ball. So there's smacking, if you want to call it that, or swatting at the ball, forehand, backhand. Essentially it's a striking skill, so they go around striking the ball all over the place, running around, and you can have whatever rules that you want to implement, but basically the main ones are there's no throwing, no catching, no rolling, no running with the ball, because it's all just little smacks or little slaps or whatever to move the ball around and try and score goals. Keep score if you'd like, whatever, that's up to you. And so you see just a quick example, someone's at a ball, they hit it off the wall and into the net. Of course they pass it around that way too, just by hitting the ball. And you can have it more challenging by turning the nets inwards, and then there are more goals scored that way usually. This game's called Steal the Ball, and it's a skill work game for grades 2 to 8. You'll need some type of ball, soccer ball, basketball, volleyball, even baseball or football could work. The more of them the better, and hula hoops. So to start, you're going to have the middle area. It can be the middle of the gym, or if you're outside, create an area with a bunch of the balls. We'll use a soccer ball in this example, and then create some teams. You can have 4 teams, 5 teams, 6 teams, 7 teams, 8 teams, whatever you'd like, and then you'd have some players. So we have in the 6 teams, 2 players for each team. You could have 3 or 4, but usually 2 or 3 would work a little bit better, so there's less standing around. So if you can manage with 2 in a team, basically the idea when the whistle blows, the first person from each team is going to run to the middle area and collect the ball. And since it's soccer, then they'll have to dribble the ball back to their area and into their hula hoop, which is their collection area. Once they get there, their partner could then go and grab a ball. Once all the balls have been retrieved from the middle, there's nothing left. They can then go and steal from other groups. So they'd run over and steal a ball and bring it back. Players aren't allowed to defend to try and stop people from stealing it. It just won't work so well. The other ways to play, if it was volleyball, when players get to the middle of the circle and they grab a volleyball, they would have to set it to themselves on the way back. So they just keep setting it to themselves till they get back. So that's one skill you could work on. If it was basketball, of course, they would dribble the ball back. If it was football or baseball, maybe the one partner would run to the middle, grab the football, and then throw it to their partner and complete a catch in the hula hoop, hopefully. And then the next player would run, or they'd switch spots, or you can work on it as you see. Hey everyone, here's a game called Eraser Football, and this is a lead-up game to American football, or you can also use it when you're talking about the differences between offense and defense. So here's our playing area. You're going to have to create 2 end zones, and the defensive team is going to start in the field, and the offensive team is going to start in their own end zone. And they're going to start in a little huddle, and they're doing that so they can hide what they're doing, because they're going to pass around a little eraser, a pencil eraser, to one of the players, so the other team can't see who has it. Once one of the players has it, they'll spread out, and on the signal, they're going to try and run across to the other side without getting tagged. And you can do this when you're working on 2-hand tag, or you can even put some flags in there if you want instead. But either way, they're going to try and make it to the other end without getting tagged. So they're going across. Anyone who gets tagged has to sit down where they got tagged, and then they're going to check once the whole play is over. If players made it across the other side, we see 3 players there. If the player who has the eraser is in the end zone, then they get a point. If the player who had the eraser was tagged, then obviously they wouldn't get a point. And then the other team, they switch roles, and the other team gets a chance to be offense. This game's called Container Ball for grades 3 to 6. You'll need 6 folding mats and foam balls. And thanks to Russ Alvarez and Bruce Bowman for this game idea. So here's the general setup. You'll use the 2 basketball hoops on the ends and the center line, and you'll have 2 teams each starting on one of the halves. And on Team B's half will be a container for Team A. You're going to use some folding mats on their edges, standing up on their edges to make this container, this box. And the same thing on Team A's side will be a container for Team B to try and throw the foam balls in. And also on Team B's side will be a jail for Team A, and that'll just be a mat laying flat on the floor. And the same thing on Team A's side will be a jail for Team B, a mat on the floor. And so we're going to look now with the players in here. So we've got the yellow players, that was Team A, and the green players, Team B. They'll each start on their half, but they won't stay on their half. The players are safe on their own half, and they can get tagged if they go onto the other team's half, as long as the player has a ball in their hand. And we'll look at that in a bit here. So we'll throw the dodgeballs in play here, and then the game's on. So basically the idea is to try and throw the foam balls or the dodgeballs into the container, and you can do that from your own half, or it might be easier, or it could be easier if you try and go into the other team's half to throw those balls in. But the players are allowed to try and guard or block the balls from going into the container, so that's something you have to think of in this game. So there's some strategy involved. Now, while no one is paying attention, the yellow player threw a ball, and it went in the container, so that's acceptable. That's okay. And we see now a green player has tried to go across to get a closer shot into that container, but was tagged by a yellow player who had a ball. So, of course, when you're on the wrong team's half, you have to be careful. And so that player will then go into the jail on the yellow team side. And the game will, of course, it's continuing on. A green player has ran in there, got a ball through in the container, and ran back. And so, of course, that's something that can be done. And again, those yellow players could have been blocking that container or tried to tag that player, but he was too quick. So we see further as a yellow player has gone onto the green team side to get a close shot, but it was tagged. So where does that player go? Right into the jail on the green team side. And that's kind of how this game works. Again, a yellow player's gone to a ball, thrown it over, and it's made into the container. So that's another one from their own side, and that's okay. So there's more, a couple more in that, or now there's 2 in that one container. Now see, if players in jail, they can be freed by their teammates. So if someone from their side throws it over that and has been caught when you're in the jail, then you're going to be free, or you can be freed. But you have to think of 3 things. So you catch a ball when you're in the jail, it has to be caught. It can't just be rolled to you, or it can't just be a ball on the floor that you pick up. You have to catch that ball when you're in the jail. And you can step off the mat, and you can do one of 3 things. You can try and make it back to your own side without getting tagged, or you can try and throw that ball into the container and then try to make it back without getting tagged, or you can try to make a basket, and the basket's kind of a special rule. So we're going to see what happens in this. In this case, this player's going to choose to try and make the basket. So the player's got that ball and got out of the jail without getting tagged, has released the ball and has thrown it, and it has gone in. Now if that happens, then the green team will get to collect all those balls that were in the container that the yellow threw in there, and they become the possession of the green team. So that's how that works. And you can also use some cones to make it kind of a buffer area around the jails, so you can't kind of puppy guard the jails. Remember, you can puppy guard the containers, so that's where it gets tricky when players are going back and forth on the other team's halves. And the other thing that can happen in this game is if the teacher chooses, can yell jailbreak, and if that's yelled out, then anyone in the jails can make that decision to try and get out of jail without getting tagged, or I guess you could even make it where they get a free pass if jailbreak is yelled, but that's totally up to you. And that's the general idea of this game. So you're just trying to get those balls into the container and also try and empty the opponent's containers by getting a basket if you're able to. This game's called Flag Tag for grades 3 to 8. You'll need flags, 2 boxes, and pennies. And thanks, Jason, for this game idea. So to start, you'll place down the boxes, and you can use milk crates. They work really great for this game. You have them about 50 meters apart. You can adjust that depending on the group size you have. And one team will have purple pennies here, and another team will have blue pennies there. And notice that all players have a flag. Now basically the goal of the game is to go and try and steal the flags from the other team and bring them back into your collection area or your box. So we see that one blue player has gone and has taken the flag from a purple player. Now that blue player will then bring that flag back and place it into the box, and the purple player will go back to their own box because they're going to look to see if there's a flag inside. Now at this point there is no flag inside that bin, so that purple player will have to wait until one of their teammates can bring back a flag. And so the game continues on. We see that player has gone and actually grabbed another flag, so he's doing pretty good. And so of course when you lose a flag, you've got to go and wait to see if there's one in there, which there still isn't. And that blue player is just continuing on here, stealing more flags. So we see another player has lost their flag and is gone there. Now what happens is if that blue player is trying to make it back and lost all the flags, or I guess lost the flag that was stuck in, and so he must give up all his flags to that purple player, and then that purple player or the blue player would return home, and the purple player would go of course to his place and drop the flags in there. Now you see at this point, well, the blue player, when he got there, well, there was one in his bin, so he can grab that and continue playing. And now we can see there's actually enough flags in that bin for all those purple players, so they would grab them and they could join the game. It's called Keeper of the Castle. In this game, you're going to use the center circle of the gym, and that's going to be the castle. And inside the castle is a bunch of treasure, and those are going to be little pieces of equipment like bean bags, tennis balls, frisbees, that kind of thing. And in the corners, you'll have 4 bases, and in each base, you're going to have different teams. And finally, you're going to have the keeper of the castle who's going to protect all the treasure inside. And if you don't want just one, you can have a few keepers who are going to be protecting all that treasure in the middle. Now the idea of the game is teams are going to go around and try and steal pieces of equipment from the middle without getting tagged by the keepers of the castle. And if they can successfully do that and bring a piece of equipment back, then that's one extra for their team. And we've seen another example, players ran and got tagged by one of the keepers, so that player must then go back to their base and touch the hula hoop, and then they're back in the game. If players go to the middle and grab a piece of equipment and then get tagged, then they have to put the equipment back and then go back to their base, and then they're back in the game. And then you just go until all the equipment's out, and that's it. Alright, we're going to look at a version of Capture the Flag. This is one of many versions of this game, so it might not be the exact one you're looking for, but I suggest checking it out anyways because it's a lot of fun. You're going to need some flags, or you could use pins instead, some hula hoops, and some pylons, or those cones. Okay, so what you're going to start with some hula hoops on the corners of the gym. The gym's going to be split into 2 halves for 2 different teams. And in those hula hoops, you want to put some flags. And then around the hula hoop, you're going to put some cones. This is going to be a buffer zone or a safe area. I'll explain that in a bit. So you'll do that to both sides, some flags and some cones. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to put some hula hoops that will act as jails, and again I'll explain that in a bit. And you're going to put those beside the cones along the edge of the gym. And finally you have your teams. You'll split up, you'll make 2 even teams, and now the goal of the game is for the teams to try and capture the flag from the other side. So there are 4 flags in the blue hula hoops. So gray's going to try and grab the ones from the left side, and black's going to grab the ones on the right side. And you're going to try and do this without getting tagged. If you enter the other team's territory, so into their half, you can get tagged. And if you get tagged, you head to jail. We'll take a look in a sec. So we'll see right now, if a gray player can make it into that safe zone inside those cones, he's safe there, can't get tagged, and he can grab a flag. If he can make it safely out, so without getting tagged by anybody, and bring it back to his side, then his team has won 1 flag. So far it's 5-3. Now what happens is if a player tries to go and grab a flag but gets tagged, that player must enter jail and stay there until he can get saved. Okay, so black player tries to get in, got tagged as well. So we have a black player that goes into the jail as well. So both teams have somebody in the jail. What we have here is if you can manage to get a flag, but when you leave and you're still in the other team's half, if you get tagged, well, now you have to go and put the flag back and then go into the jail. Alright, so even if you have a flag, you've got to make it back to your half without getting tagged. He went in that same jail as the other person. It doesn't matter which hula hoop you go into, they both do the same thing. So you can go to whichever jail. And While that was happening, the black player has gone in and saved his teammate, so made it there without getting tagged, so they both get a free walk back where they can't get tagged. So those are basically the scenarios that can happen in this game. The game lasts until somebody grabs, or sorry, not somebody, until one team grabs all the other team's flags and brings them back to their zone. So in this game, there would be 8 on one half and 0 on the other. And that's just one version of capture the flag. Capture the flag outdoors for grades 3 to 8. You'll need 2 flags and a large playing area, and that's it. And all credit and thanks goes to Paul Groskopf. He's a friend and colleague of mine at our school. He brought this game this year, and with his classes, with all the rules modifications of taking the standard capture the flag and bringing it to phys ed class. So thanks, Paul. Every time I say we in this video, I actually mean him, so just keep that in mind. It's important to find a good playing area large enough for 10 to 40 players approximately in there should work. And if you have obstacles and hiding places, those will always help. But it will work if you just have a plain open field. That's fine too. It can work. So we started off at the baseball diamond area. So we had 2 diamonds, and there's a path splitting them. That was important. And one team would be on one half, of course the other team on the other half in those boundaries. And we found that teams like to hide often in the fitness park, so hide their flag in the fitness park if they were on that side, and over by the buildings if they were on this side. So it showed you a little bit of importance with obstacles. Now I'll get into the rules in a second here, but we moved from the baseball diamonds to a forest or bush type area, and I wanted to show you this picture to talk about the flags. So Paul put together these flags using ski posts, and he tied some fluorescent scarves to it. And the rule we have with the flags is you can hide them anywhere, even up in trees and whatnot, but the color has to be seen, so they can't bury it under, or they can't like tuck it somewhere so you can't see the color. And yeah, and we had one team would be on one half, so kind of these scrawny trees on that side, and the other team on that half, and we'd switch of course after time, so both teams had both areas. So we're going to look now at an overhead view, and we have the path in the middle again, and that's pretty important. And as well, you're going to have a bench or some sort of an area you have to designate as a jail, and we'll see about that in a sec as well. So one team on one half, the other team on the other half, and they're going to hide their flags. So at the beginning, they're spending a few minutes, or not a few minutes, 30 seconds to hide their flags. No peeking. So you got to tell the teams to not look at the other team when they're hiding their flag, because it ruins the fun, obviously. And when they're done that, you're going to blow the whistle to start. And the idea is to bring the flag, the opposing team's flag, find their flag, capture their flag, obviously in the name, and bring it back to your side across the center line. So that center line is super important. And so this would almost never happen, but if a player went onto the other team's half, didn't get caught, grabbed the flag, and brought it back, that round would be over. That would be it. So, of course, that doesn't happen so easily, so we'll reset it here. And what happens if a player gets onto the other team's half, they can get tagged. So if you're on your own half, you're safe. On the other team's half, you can get tagged. So that pink player got tagged, needs to go into the jail for 2 minutes. That's the time in the jail. And meanwhile, the player who tagged that player also has to go to the jail, but just tap the jail or tap the bench, and then they can go back into play. And that's important so that one player can't just tag a whole bunch of people at a time. They can tag one player, they've got to bring them to the jail or go to the jail, tap the bench, and then they're back in play. And we had those flags, there's a boundary where you cannot guard, so there's no puppy guarding. So if you look at those flags maybe 10 feet or 15 feet away, that's why you see no players are directly near the flag, because you have to have a rule. If everyone's just puppy guarding the flag, the game doesn't go anywhere. So if a player's gone across and grabbed the flag and is bringing it back to their team and they get tagged, they have to drop the flag where it is. It stays there. It doesn't go back to the beginning. It stays where they got tagged, goes to jail. Of course, the player who tagged also goes and taps the bench, and then they can go back into play. That center line or the center path, that's a free zone, so anybody can go in there, and there's no tagging allowed there. So you can have as many players from the teams, they can go there and whatnot, and be free in that area and move about as they want on the path. If the game is taking too long, if a team can't find the other flag, or if it's just the time's running out, you can yell a big free for all. If you yell free for all, that means there is no tagging, so it's just a mass free for all. Everyone scatters. Even if they're in the jail, they can run out of jail and just try and find the flag, grab the flag, and be the first team to bring the flag back across into their half. And that's essentially the basic rules. Paul also had an additional build to this, which I had a lot of fun too, is you put in a couple items, so really small, maybe bean bags or something, and hide them. As a teacher, you can walk around and drop them or hide them, and those are the immunity items, where if somebody throughout the round can find one of these items and hold on to it, so we see these bean bags here, if a player grabs one and holds on to it, then they are immune from being tagged. So that player can then enter the other team's half, and if they show the players, oh look, I have the immunity item, then they can't get tagged. So they have a free range of finding that flag. And that's it for the standard version of capture the flag.